A Shalom Akim Shalom Shalom. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai Ba'ashem Kakadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders, great millstone for teaching us his truth, and salutations to the sincere Akim and Aquafim and listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Raquai. I'm back in here with another quick and Lord's will is always an edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I kind of just wanted to read through a quick account here in the book of Chronicles in regards to a king named Ahaziah, right? So just going through, some of the events that have played through, that occurred during his time of rulership, and what kind of like spiritual nuggets can we extract from his reign, during his time, because the scriptures do say that the things that are written aforetime are written for our learning, right? So, as a matter of fact, I think I'll start off with that one. Just bear with me on this. Let me just open it. Okay, so this is Romans 15, verse 4, and it says that whatsoever the things which are were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope, right? So these things, these accounts here give us comfort, give us counsel, guidance, instruction, and essentially how to navigate certain situations, especially living in the valley of the shadow of death, right? So what I just wanted to do was to go through this quick story here in regards to King Ahaziah, right? So I want to read it and hang on one second. Okay, so I want to start from the top here, and Lord's will, this will be edifying, right? So this is the book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 22. Just hold up here. Verse 1. And it says, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem made Ahaziah the youngest king in his stead, for the band of men that came with the Arabians to the camp had slain all the eldest. So Ahaziah the son of Jehoram king of Judah reigned. 42 years was Ahaziah when he began to reign, and reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, the daughter of Omri. And he also walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, right? So Ahab was married to what's that woman's name? Jezebel, right? For his mother, and here's one of the key points I wanted to hit here. His mother was his counselor to do wickedly, wherefore he did evil in the sight of the Lord, like the house of Ahab. For there were his counselors after the death of his father to his destruction, right? So, being at this age, he was supposed to be already taught to the law and understanding there are things that you do and things that you don't do, right? But he entertained the counsel of the wicked counsel of his mother, and essentially what did that do? It enticed him to do things that caused him to transgress against the Lord, right? So all in all here, he received bad counsel, right? And the scriptures talk about how a child is supposed to be trained up in the way that they should go, and when they're old, they don't depart from it. So ideally, our children are supposed to be raised with the law, statutes, and commandments. What did Moses say? I think in Deuteronomy, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom in the sight of these other nations, to roughly paraphrase, right? But he entertained wicked counsel, wicked advice, and it caused him folly and damnation upon him, right? So what I wanted to do here is read this precept here. This is Proverbs 5, verse 1. The point's in 4, so just bear with me. And it says, my son, attend to my wisdom and bow thine ear to my understanding, that thou mayest regard discretion, that thy lips may keep knowledge. It says, for the lips, here's the point, the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood and sharp as a two-edged sword, right? So this is the vibration of what certain philosophies can do, right? And even sometimes even the counsel of an actual strange woman can do, right? If it's not coming out, if it's something that is contrary to the scriptures, if it's contrary to the ways the Lord instructed us to be, that is enticing. That can cause a lot of men to, err. It causes a lot of people to, err from the ways of the Lord, right? That vibration is very, very enticing. What did Paul say to the Israelites in Corinth? He said, I have espoused you to one husband, that you may be chaste. And when you go into that word chaste, it refers to a mindset of purity. It refers to a mindset that is like essentially you're only focused on one husband, and that's the responsibility of an Israelite man. We're not supposed to be focused on these other different philosophies, these other different gods, these other different ways that are contrary of the ways that we're supposed to be, right? But this is one of the mistakes that he made. He followed the counsel of his mother, right? He followed wicked counsel, bad counsel, right? That caused him to err, that caused him to transgress, right? And it says, verse 5, and it says, and he walked, 2 Chronicles 22, verse 5, and it says, he walked also after their counsel, and when Jeroboam, the son of Ahab, king of Israel, to war against Hazael, the king of Syria, at Ramoth Gilead, and the Syrians smote Joram, and returned to be healed in Jezreel because of the wounds which were given him at Ramah, which he fought with Hazael, king of Syria. And Azariah, the son of Joram, the king of Judah, went down to see Jehoram, the son of Ahab, in Jezreel, because he was sick. And the destruction of Ahaziah was of the Most High by coming to Joram, for he was to come, and he went out to Jehoram against Jehu, the son of Nimshi, whom the Lord had anointed to cut off the house of Ahab. And it came to pass, when Jehu was executing judgment upon the house of Ahab, and found the princes of Judah and the sons of the brethren of Ahaziah, that ministered to Ahaziah, he slew them. And he sought Ahaziah and caught him. So essentially that judgment caught up to him, because he still followed and he behaved wickedly, right? And it says, for he was hid in Samaria, and brought him to Jehu, and when they had slain him, they buried him, because said they, he is the son of Jehoshaphat. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was one of the righteous kings, that came before him, right? But you see that it's so important when you really think about it, because you might have a son, and your son, you might be righteous, but the son may not be. And this is what we're experiencing, especially even today. You only have a small amount of, sons that are striving to be righteous, and then you have a bunch of ungodly children. You have a bunch of ungodly niggas and YNs, crashing out, going into jewelry stores, you know, burglarizing, terrorizing the people. They're becoming a spirit. Essentially, they have spirits that are created for vengeance, becoming a terror unto their own people, right? And as a matter of fact, let me go to the Apocrypha, since I'm referring to ungodly sons. Just bear with me on this. Let's go to Sirach 16. This is Sirach 16, verse 1. And it says, "Desire not a multitude of unprofitable children, neither delight in ungodly sons. Though they multiply, rejoice not in them, except the fear of the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai be with them." And that's one of the main things that a lot of our children are missing, because they are not taught that, because, they don't get that proper counsel, that proper guidance from, their parents, right? Because they don't seem to understand also they are also an extension of their parents, of their household. What is the judgment for a stubborn son? You take him out, to the elders, and eventually he's stoned. And it's done in a way that, okay, you see what happened to Tyrone? It's done in the front of other people, so all the other children would see and understand, like, this is not the way we're supposed to conduct ourselves. They're supposed to be traumatized in righteousness, right? But because the law is slack in this society, like it says in Habakkuk, the proper judgment never goes forth, right, until they're essentially taken out by the Lord, right? So you would see a lot of these different ungodly children, they might die in a very horrific sense, right? They might, it might be in the hands of a police officer, it might be in the hands of, accident, not accident per se, but, car crash, stray bullet, and whoever perished being innocent, like it says in Job, right? There's a lot of ungodly children out here, especially in this time, man. Let me just finish this off here. It's a short chapter, but it says, this is 2 Chronicles 22. I'll start at verse 9, and it says, "And sought Ahaziah, they caught." Oh, I'll just read verse 9 again, and it says, "For he was hid in Samaria, and brought him to Jehu, and when they slain him, they buried him, because said they, he is the son of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord, with all his heart. So the house of Ahaziah had no power to keep still the kingdom. And when Ahaziah, the mother of Ahaziah, saw that her son was dead, she arose and destroyed all the royal seed of the house of Judah. For Jehoshaphat, daughter of the king, took Joash, the son of Ahaziah, and stole him among the king's sons that were slain, and put him in a nurse bedchamber. So Jehoshaphat, the daughter of King Joram, the wife of Jehoiada the priest, for she was the sister of Ahaziah, hid him from Athaliah, so that she slew him not. And she was with them, hid in the house of the Most High 6 years, and Athaliah reigned over the land," right? So she was tripping. Now she gave very, very, bad advice, right? But she slew all the royal seed, right? This is why And one of the things I also wanted to hit from this lesson, hit from this chapter, was the fact that him being a king, not only is supposed to be trained up in the ways of the Lord, trained up in the laws, understanding the laws, knowing the laws, but one of his mistakes also, because I was kind of tackling from the parental perspective, and I also wanted to tackle from his perspective too. From because of his perspective, he was supposed to be able to check his mother, right? Kind of like, for example, the account in when Yahushai, who was I believe was in the temple, and when his mother and then the mother came, and she said, how did she say it? I have, and let me get it. Let me get it, because I'm gonna mess it up. Because this is one of the things he should have done. He should have checked her, because you're telling me to do something that's going to cause me to transgress, right? This is Luke chapter 2, verse 48, and it says, "And when they saw him, they were amazed, and his mother said to him, Son, why hast thou dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I sought thee sorrowing. When he said unto him," Yahushua speaking, "How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my father's business?" And they understood not the saying which he spake unto them. Right? So, Yahushua handled the situation so like in a masculine frame, because he had something to do. He had a job to do, right? But he was at a point where, okay, now it's time for me to commence what I'm supposed to do here, right? And the same thing with this king. One of his downfalls is that he should have checked her with any counsel that was going to cause him to transgress, right? And that is one of the things that I think that causes a lot of men to essentially, what's the word I'm looking for? It causes them to, essentially, the word I'm looking for is that causes them to fail. It's the fact that they we live in a society where it pedestalizes the woman, and the woman can do no wrong, right? So your judgment is essentially blinded. Your judgment is become very, very cloudy. And because it's mostly women that are in our households, it's the fact that there is no proper guidance of how to handle certain situations, because she's not supposed to be put in a position of rulership in the first place, right? She's not supposed to be there, right? But that was one of his counsels. That was one of his failures as a king. He was supposed to be taught in the ways of the Lord, and he was supposed to be essentially ignoring those ways that were contrary to the Lord, right? What did King Solomon say? He said the whole duty. Let me get it. Ecclesiastes 12. This is Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13, and it says, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear the Most High, and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man," right? So he should have been to be able to understand, like, this type of counsel you're giving me, this is going to cause me to transgress. We're not doing this, right? And what does that do? It establishes a sentiment of respect. It creates a level of boundaries, because he's at an age where he's a king, right? And now you're in charge, because you're keeping the ways of the Lord Yahweh Shai, right? You've been given that instruction to carry on that duty, to carry on, uphold that mantle, because you're a king, right? So you king, the people are looking at, they're not essentially looking at you for guidance, but you're the person who's, presiding over them, right? Let me get one last one here. Let me see. Just bear with me on this. Okay, this is Sirach chapter 37, verse 11. And it says, "Neither consult with a woman touching her of whom she is jealous, neither with a coward in matters of war, nor a merchant concerning exchange, nor a buyer of selling, nor with a envious man of thankfulness, nor with a unmerciful man concerning touching kindness, nor with the slothful for any work, nor with an hireling for a year of finishing work, nor with an idle servant with much business." And it says, "Hearken not unto these in any matter of counsel." So essentially it gives you different scenarios and people to not seek certain counsels from. You're not gonna go to I'll give you an example. I'll just use Homer Simpson as an example. If Homer Simpson was a real character, you're not going to go to him for advice on how to be a father, right? He is not a good example of that. Of course, he's just a made-up character. He's a fictional character. But the point, you're not going to go to him, in regards to these different situations. You're not going to go to him concerning how to eat healthy, because all he does is eat donuts all day. This is not the right type of person to counsel with. Just like his mother wasn't the right person to counsel with in regards to situations, in regards to rulership, in regards to executing proper judgment, right? So I guess I'll read verse 12 and I'll just end it off here. But it says, "But be continually with a godly man who knowest to keep the commandments of the Lord, whose mind is according to thy mind, and will sorrow with thee if thou shalt miscarry." So he should have been counseling with godly men. He should have been counseling with a prophet. He should have been counseling with somebody, a priest, somebody that can give you the proper guidance, in regards to these sorts of affairs and has that experience, right? So that's pretty much it. I just thought it was a very interesting topic, because a lot of our men, they fall short because they might seek their counsel from their mother because it's their mother, and so on and so forth. But a lot of the times, a lot of women will give a lot of these men wrong counsel, and it causes the men to fall short. It causes the men trying to transgress, go into damnation, because they were giving wicked counsel, or she might have been in a very emotional state, and that bad counsel caused him to err, right? Or it might cause them to essentially make the situations worse. I'll give you just a quick example and I'll end the lesson. I remember there was a show that used to be, I believe it was on TLC, and they were these boys that were being raised by their moms, right? And I don't remember the name of the show, but there was an episode where the boy, he was very into comics and so on and so forth, and the mother, there was a girl that I think they went to a Comic-Con convention, and then there was a girl that the son had really liked. But what the mother did was really, really, conniving, kind of, essentially wicked, was the fact that she gave him, bad counsel by trying to sabotage what potential relationship that can arise out of him joining with a woman and becoming one flesh. As the scriptures talk about, cleaving, a man should cleave unto his wife and become one flesh, to roughly paraphrase, right? So because there is no father in the household, what does that do? It becomes an unhealthy dynamic between the mother and the son, right? And that kind of puts a strain on the family household. That's why a nuclear family is a very, very important part of the household that's been destroyed. So, anyways, I kind of just wanted to mention that, because it's a very interesting story, right? In regards to counsel, in regards to who to counsel with, because it led to his damnation, right? So, Lord's will, this lesson was edifying. Just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashem El Shai. Until next time, I say Shalom.